Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's been a while, but here I am. Before we start the video today talking about impeachment and some other things, I just wanted to thank our sponsor, again, Noble Gold. You guys may not know much about Holland, but it is actually one of the world's biggest trading nations, and it's been involved in commerce for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the Dutch National Bank there holds over $20 billion worth of gold in its vaults, and those are scattered all around the world for safety. And it's recently been noted to be buying more, and its website even says that gold always retains its value. No matter the crisis, the financial issues, gold always retains its value. And you never know if something goes wrong with the financial world, if your IRA accounts will hold their value in that crisis. If you don't know the answer to that, you probably don't have ownership and control of the retirement savings that you guys have worked really hard to keep your hands on, which leaves you at the mercy of the market. Not a great place to be in case something hits the fan. So if you expect to stay safe, you guys have to look to yourselves, not put all your hope in the Washington establishment and the Fed. Find out how you guys can secure your IRA or 401k, get a tax break, and take back control of your finances by calling Noble Gold today at 877-646-5347, or there'll be a link I'll provide to get the information to learn about in the Gold video series. So it's 877-646-5347. Ask to speak to a representative today. Make sure you tell them that Tracybeanz sent you. And thank our channel sponsor, Noble Gold. They've been with me for a long time. Love them. Awesome, awesome company. Good morning, everyone. Hi, guys. I know it's been a while. I've been really, really busy, hard at work on a lot of different things. But I wanted to come and talk to you today about work that I've been doing for Uncover DC and kind of just stepping back a couple of steps and taking a look at this from like 30,000 feet. And I know a lot of other people are doing the same thing. You know, the impeachment fiasco that started based off of a transcript of or based off of a leaker report of a call that never happened. And they got incorrect information, and they used that in a whistleblower report, which the ICIG just went right to Congress with. If you guys listened to Dan Bongino's interview with President Trump yesterday, he made the point to say that they didn't even, explore it at all before they went right to Congress with it. And that he made the point a couple times that Nancy Pelosi's angry because what she was told was not there. And that's been getting my wheels spinning a little bit. I've been trying to kind of come up with what happened and what went wrong, because there's no way that they could have pulled this. There's no way they would have gone forward with this, in my opinion, on such a weak and flimsy basis. So I've been exploring Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. My last video was the statement from Hickman, Lieutenant Colonel Hickman, on his experiences with Michael Vindman and Vindman's relationship with the whistle leaker, and what the heck happened there, and whether or not Vindman could have been the one. Remember, he wanted to change the transcript. Whether he could have been the one to leak to the whistleblower what he thought was going to be changed in the transcript, and they just went so quickly that they messed themselves up. But that's the functionality of how it happened, not the why. So obviously they want to remove the president. Obviously they want to cause problems for re-election. Obviously, we all know that stuff already. But I've been really trying to figure out, or put together in a more cohesive form, what is it about this that is really girding them? And Ukraine is a very important country in terms of power and in terms of money and in terms of global politics. So I have a really amazing writer for Uncover DC named Daniel Babinski. You can find him on Twitter at New Book of Daniel. He's really fantastic. As a matter of fact, if any of you guys are business coaches or business owners out there, he does some really amazing business coaching and all kinds of strategy and stuff like that. You can check out his Twitter page and find out more information on that. I want to give him a little hat tip there because he has been an asset to Uncover DC. And we've been working on some stuff together. And I know that Glenn Beck came out and did a big thing on George Soros, just happened to happen at the same time as we were working on this piece. Now, I can't take credit for this because Daniel has written all of this. He's a brilliant writer. But on this next one we're going to go over, I worked on some research with him. We're kind of collaborating on this, and that's what's been keeping me so busy behind the scenes, because Glenn Beck did a great 2-hour on George Soros, but George Soros's tentacles are all throughout this. So what I wanted to do today was kind of plant some seeds, talk about Ukraine, its relationship to the 2016 scandal, what all that could mean, and go through these articles with you. So Daniel wrote an article on Uncover DC called "The Influence of George Soros on Impeachment." He says, "It's said that money can't buy happiness, but if we look around, it's obvious that money buys influence. Consider the amount of influence held by America's wealthiest individuals." He picked some out of the top 10. Bezos, Gates, Zuckerberg, Larry Page from Google, Sergey Brin from Google. But just because you're not in the top 10 doesn't mean you don't have an influence on our society. George Soros, he's worth only $8.6 billion today, but that's because he's donated a lot of his wealth to candidates that support his worldview. Again, his Twitter, someone asked, @NewBookOfDaniel. You've probably heard the Soros name associated with progressive political agendas, and with good reason. In Forbes, they report that he's donated more than $32 billion, 80% of his life's income, to advance progressive causes. But having spent $32 billion over the years, obviously substantial, but the Open Society Foundation, which was started and funded completely by Soros, provides direct funding for more than 200 organizations in the United States alone. And there are at least 47 offices throughout the world, with activity occurring in more than 120 countries. Which country has the most Open Society Foundation offices? If you thought it was this country, the United States, you're wrong. We only have 3. Ukraine, little Ukraine, has 5. 5 offices, more than any other country. What does he have going on there? Well, the U.S. Department of State uploaded their documents, uploaded to Scribd, which are linked here for you, show that Soros in 2016 was meeting with then Ukrainian president and also their prime minister at the time. And the documents originated from the Soros Open Society Foundation. And in the CC of a few of those emails is a very interesting name, which I can't say or they'll take down this video. Charlie. News about the ties between Soros and Ukraine aren't new. He did an interview about 20 years ago where Steve Croft said, when we went with him to the Ukraine, he was treated like a visiting head of state, was received by the president, then the prime minister, and finally the central bank. And they even allowed him to look at the books and asked him for advice. Daniel says, correlation does not equal causation, but I find it interesting that tradingeconomics.com shows corruption in the Ukraine on a steady increase over the past 20 years. Soros has also supported left-wing politicians in the United States, which we're going to get to in a second. Just maybe this explains why so many congressional representatives scurried quickly to start impeachment proceedings when President Trump started investigating what is going on in Ukraine. Many of them owe their political careers to his money. So if Soros said jump, you can bet they were asking how high. If you're wondering just how tight Pelosi is tied to Soros, you don't need to look very far. Fox News said in November of 2017 that Pelosi and Soros shared a stage raising money from liberal donors in California for a, quote, shaping political and policy transformation in America, and the conference was titled Beyond Resistance, Reclaiming Our Progressive Future. The event, held at a resort north of San Diego, was hosted by Democracy Alliance. It is a club where a bunch of high-wing leftists, noticed Marxist Van Jones was there, then president of Planned Parenthood Cecile Richard, and David Brock, founder of Media Matters. Media Matters, which openly states it seeks to monitor only conservative news, is funded by both Democracy Alliance and George Soros. The Democracy Alliance website also shows these guys are staying up on the resistance movements in the country. Their website says, Over the past year, Democracy Alliance also turned its attention to track the evolution of resistance organizations, many of them new, working on the front lines to defend democratic values, institutions, and norms from the current administration's assaults and transform an organic grassroots movement into an electoral force. Pelosi and Soros were funneling money into PACs to try and unseat Nunes, and Nunes authored the now famous Nunes memo just a month before that. The timing of these efforts should have received more attention, but of course, crickets. There are plenty of other politicians receiving money from Soros: Schumer, Blumenthal, Ellison, Harris, Graham, and Kasich. In the 2018 election, he poured a lot of his money into Senate, knowing the Senate would have the final say after the House voted to impeach Trump, which Daniel thinks he planned all along. Thankfully, that didn't work, but it hasn't stopped people from moving forward with their attempt to impeach Trump. That said, know that Soros is unrelenting. Don't think for a moment he'll lay back for the 2020 elections. He's 89, and Trump is standing in the way of him getting what he wants. He talks about Alexander Soros, his son, being actively involved in the family business, also has a foundation of his own. People were accidentally calling Alexander Soros Eric, Charlie. And what's going on now? So if you think about the meddling, I hate that word, in the 2016 election, the impact that George Soros has had on American politics and politics around the world and what he's trying to do and all the trouble he's gotten into. And then you think about what would happen if all of that got uncovered for the public. You kind of get a picture of what's going on here. At all costs, they have to keep this stuff quiet. At all costs, they'll do anything to stop this from coming out. That's why they've smeared John Solomon. That's why the New York Times, if you guys aren't listening to the podcast, which I do 3 times a week, please, again, do your best to listen to it. It is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It comes out at 2:30, but it's on demand. So whenever you want to listen to it, you can. It is on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. You could find it on radioinfluence.com if you just want to listen on your computer. It is 3 days a week for an hour that I go over this stuff with my co-host Frank from the Quite Frankly podcast. But we started talking about like how important this Soros thing is. And obviously Glenn Beck, who's been looking into Ukraine a lot. I know there's a lot of people who don't like him. I was on that train too, but he's been doing really good work. So I've been acknowledging that. I have to still listen to his 2-hour lecture or presentation on Soros. But we started digging around on what happened in Virginia. Daniel brought this to my attention and we worked on it a lot. In Virginia, there was a super PAC started that is called, I'm going to find it. Hold on. I keep on messing up the name of the super PAC. Just bear with me. The Justice and Public Safety PAC. This super PAC was formed in 2017 in February by Jonathan Birkin, who is a Democrat election lawyer with Perkins Coie. Sound familiar? He starts this super PAC, Justice and Public Safety PAC, and according to the FEC, the only person who donated money to this PAC was George Soros. He started the PAC. He's the only one who funded it. He's the only one who funded it to the tune of $1,085,000. Then he took that money and he used it to donate to support efforts for 3 particular candidates in Virginia. They were all their Commonwealth Attorney PAC candidates in 3 contiguous districts. It was Buddha Biberaj, Steve Descano, and Parisa Tafti. It was Fairfax, Arlington, and what was the other one? I can't remember. Fairfax, Arlington, and I can't remember the other county, but they're all in a row. He spent $850,000, $850,000 on Biberaj's election. $850,000 on one Commonwealth attorney election in Virginia. He spent $600,000 on Steve Descano, who his race I researched was amazing. He was up against a Democrat challenger. He is complete, like all of these guys are all for removing misdemeanor crime completely. Petty larceny, drug crimes, urinating in public, all of that, getting rid of it. Yes, it was Loudon. Thank you. Getting rid of all of that and letting that go. Just like we talked about on the podcast, the district attorney who was elected in San Francisco, who was a Weather Underground and Bill Ayers acolyte who worked with Chavez, I believe, before he passed away, and is now the district attorney. His parents were in jail for murdering a police officer with the Weather Underground in New York. This is who the district attorney is in San Francisco. Funded by, who do you think? So, Descano, in his race, the Democrat who was up against him, when he saw all this going down, he couldn't believe that people would even consider voting someone like this in. He quit the Democrat Party completely. There is no limit. This is how PACs work. Let me give everybody a little bit of PACs and super PACs. PACs and super PACs can donate an unlimited amount of money to supportive efforts to a campaign. So they can pay for all of their PR, all of their get out a vote, all of their printing, all of their media, all of everything that they need. The campaign the PAC can buy that stuff. So again, just to recap, George Soros funds a super PAC. He is the only donor to the super PAC. It is in Virginia. The name of the super PAC is, and I always forget, the Justice and Public Safety PAC. He funds the PAC to $1.1 million, we'll just say, almost $1.1 million. $800,000 of that money, $850,000 of that goes to just one of these Commonwealth attorney positions, and the rest is divvied up around two others in contiguous counties in Virginia. Super PACs are not supposed to coordinate activities with political parties or candidates. They're not allowed to do that. There was a lot of activity that we saw when we were looking at these records that appeared as though there were coordination with the candidates, like $27,000 for a video production. That doesn't happen without somehow coordinating with the candidate to get that done. Even if the company doing the production was coordinating with the candidate directly, they would have to okay the video being done. So there's a lot of gray area here. And if they're not supposed to be coordinating with candidates, the Justice and Public Safety PAC Facebook page, which we found, says that it is authorized by Parisa Deghani Tafti, candidate for Commonwealth attorney. And we have a screenshot of that from November 14th, 2019, which you can see right here. Under more info, it says paid for by Justice and Public Safety PAC, authorized by Parisa Deghani Tafti, candidate for Commonwealth attorney. So we spent the better portion of a full day trying to figure out what the heck is going on in Virginia, other than the entire legislature being swept by progressive socialists, that he needs these 3 Commonwealth attorneys and he's willing to spend $1 million to get them. Very, very strange. And the Descano race I paid close attention to was really, really crazy. So hire a Perkins Coie lawyer to start you up a super PAC. The filing is you need to have certain positions filled, the treasurer, etc., so on and so forth. This was a bare bones filing. So now what we've started doing, and the Washington Post, the New York Times, a lot of left-leaning media outlets actually talked about this. And and said that all this money was pouring into Virginia and the Commonwealth attorney positions. And one of the people that received the most money, Biberaj, said, she was questioned about this. And she said, the super PAC is only supporting the message that she was already promoting. However, she won her seat by a very slim margin. So if she didn't have that $850,000, what would she be doing right now? It seems that there's a focus on, all the kind of upper levels of this stuff. But as we've been researching and peeling back the layers on all of what Soros is doing, and I know this is like a tired subject because people have talked about Soros for years, but it is really alarming. He stopped really trying to buy off the major political election seats, probably because of the microscope. And now he's gone hyper local to take over law enforcement, which would then open the door for some really pretty serious stuff. Really serious stuff. And we're going to continue with this. Just to give you an idea of how they hide, I just want to talk about this, the shell game. In 2017, when Trump took office, he moved $18 billion of his $26 billion into the Open Society Foundation, which, before we go, I'm going to tell you how there's a William Taylor connection there. William Taylor, the star witness, I'll tell you about that in a second. So he moves $18 billion over into Open Society, and then he funds hundreds of left-wing PACs, super PACs, left-leaning candidates, progressive causes, all kinds of stuff. Here are four of them, of more than 200 organizations in the United States that receive funds from Open Society Foundation. At first glance, they appeal to normal people, right? They're going to sound like roses and daisies. The American Constitution Society for Law and Policy, the American Family Voices, Campaign for America's Future, Faithful America. The goal of the people who founded American Constitution Society for Law and Policy, again, this is Daniel's article, he wrote all this, as revealed by discoverthenetworks.org, was countering what they saw as the corrupting influence that the conservative views of federal society were having on young law students from coast to coast. When you see American Constitutional Society, do you think anti-federalist? No. Really crafty. American Family Voices sounds like an organization with solid traditional values. But the president, Mike Lux, says funding for the organization is derived from your classic progressive donors. Lux is a Democratic strategist and author of The Progressive Revolution. Campaign for America's Future sounds pro-American, but they certainly don't support a constitutional republic. 25% of the 131 people who founded the organization were active in the Democratic Socialists of America. According to their own website, CFA heavily promotes wealth redistribution, increased social welfare programs, and they endorse the Green New Deal. And this leads me to one thing. All of these witnesses that they're calling before the committee, I don't think it's an accident. They're going to call the witnesses up in front of the committee that they need to protect from scrutiny. Yovanovitch, Taylor, Kent, Vindman. Anybody who goes after these people now, you're attacking a witness. That's the only reason why Yovanovitch was up there yesterday. Because she was part of the do not prosecute list, so she gets thrown up there for protection. They make her into a victim. Anybody who says anything about her is now obstructing justice, etc., so on and so forth. So one more article about the Ukraine thing which involves Soros. I wrote a couple weeks ago. And then I'm going to go because I'm going to the gym. Democrat star witness sat on board of Ukrainian NGO with deep ties to George Soros. I did this piece earlier. It's kind of what set Daniel on his Soros train. On Tuesday, which was weeks ago, the 15-page opening statement leaked from Taylor. And Taylor is thought to be this linchpin in the case by proponents of the impeachment inquiry, while Republicans are stating he has no direct evidence of a quid pro quo with Zelensky. In the early pages of this opening statement, he notes the following. He talks about Atlantic Council, or he talks about U.S.-Ukraine Business Council. He talks about USAID, where he was executive vice president. Then he says, I had served as ambassador to Ukraine from 2006 to 2009, having been nominated by Bush. And in the intervening 10 years, I've stayed engaged with Ukraine, visiting frequently since 2013 as a board member of a small Ukrainian NGO supporting good governance and reform. But he doesn't say the name of this NGO. He says nothing. He names everything else. He doesn't name this. Uncover DC can report that although it's been scrubbed almost entirely from the web, he spent several years on the board of a Ukrainian NGO called East Europe Foundation that has a strong partnership with something called the Open Cities Association. Open Cities is funded by the Open Governments Partnership, which accepts tens of millions of dollars from Open Society Foundation. So Taylor is funded by Soros. Taylor, sitting on the board of this Ukrainian NGO, which he failed to mention in his opening statement, is funded by George Soros directly. Does that make anybody scratch their heads a little bit? After everything we're learning and knew? Makes me. He was a senior advisor to the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, where he often presented roundtable discussions about policy with David Kramer from the McCain Institute. Evidence shown that David Kramer was responsible for laundering the Steele dossier into the FBI on behalf of John McCain and providing the dossier to BuzzFeed. Also there, a key player at the US-UBC, the Ukraine-US Business or US-Ukraine Business Council, is the Atlantic Council, funded in part by Viktor Pinchuk, a Ukrainian billionaire and oligarch who has donated to the Clinton Foundation, and CrowdStrike. Starting to wrap itself up in a bow. And Atlantic Council has Victoria Nuland, the Obama administration's Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs. She was embroiled in controversy after several things, but one of them, she had a call with the ambassador to Ukraine at the time, Pyatt, and it was leaked to YouTube, where they are discussing who they wish to install in Ukrainian government. It's deep, my friends. It's deep. Also, I think I may have been the only outlet to print the whistleblower's name at this time. I printed it here. And that's that. So there's our Saturday morning roundup of George Soros and Virginia and impeachment. I am going to link these articles in the description box below the YouTube video. I will tweet them out on Twitter. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. If you want to follow Uncover DC, they're on Twitter at Uncover DC. We're also at www.uncoverdc.com. If you'd like to help me out monthly on Patreon, it would be greatly appreciated. You guys can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Tracybeanz. Also at Subscribestar at Tracybeanz as well. And share this video if you found it valuable. I really appreciate you guys, and I will be back very soon with more. Working very, very hard on this stuff behind the scenes. When I'm quiet, I'm very busy, and indeed, I am very, very busy.